Beg your pardon. Okay. So we have two topics tonight. The first topic we're going to look at is the topic of what happened to Moshe Rabbeinu's stick, what happened to his staff. In the beginning, we find earlier on, Hashem says, Harem es matcha, lift up your stick and split the sea. But when we come to actually splitting the sea, we find that that's not exactly what happens. Let's have a look now to investigate. So, 1 second. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe, and God said to Moshe, Netei es yadcha al hayam, stretch your hand over the sea, v'yashuva hamayim al Mitzrayim, let the waters return over Egypt, return to their former nature, al richboi, over his chariots, v'al parashav, and over his riders. And here the interesting note is the fact that Hashem tells Moshe, stretch your hand. But there's no mention of the stick. What happened to the Mateh Moshe? And here we look at the Rosh Rabbeinu Asher, who says that he heard something from his father, which goes as follows. Neteis yad chaliyam, shamati mipi Abba Mari alav hashalom. I heard from my father. Shekriyas Yamsuf loy naaseis b'mateh. The splitting of the sea was not done with a rod at all. Why not? Why was this particular miracle of splitting the sea not involving Moshe Rabbeinu's rod? V'hatam, lefi shahoyu malevim or malegim al Moshe, malach Hashem tzaka. The nations or the people were accusing Moshe, and they were saying, they were making fun of Moshe, malegim. V'hayu amrim, and they were saying, makocha, Moshe Rabbeinu, he's got a koyach. Is he something special? Or Mativo Shel Moshe. And what's the big deal about Moshe? V'haloi katan mimenu. Anyone much smaller than him, anyone much smaller than him than his level. Ilu hoyomate elokim biyada. If that person would have had the stick of God in his hand, he'd also make miracles. Yasen nisim, and if lo kamahu, he would make miracles and wonders just like Moshe. For this reason, and therefore God, the vengeful God who sits in heaven, saw and made sure that he ordered Moshe his servant and said, V'ata harem es matcha. Now listen to these words. Ata harem es matcha. Now, we normally, when we learn this and we teach it to our children, we often would say, now lift up your stick. Right? Harem, to lift. But look what the Rosh's father told him. He said, harem can mean not to lift the stick, not to use the stick. On the contrary, harem means hafrishehu mimcha. Separate the stick from yourself. The word harem comes from the word truma. What does truma mean? Truma means a separation, something that you give aside, you put aside. Hashem is telling Moshe, put your staff aside. I don't want you to use your stick now. And instead, and stretch your hand over the ocean, over the Red Sea, and split it. And indeed, that's what Moshe Rabbeinu did. And as a result of that, what happened? Belief was restored in Hashem and Moshe. This is why the Pasuk says, Vayaminu b'Hashem uva Moshe avdai. Why? Ozhir Gishu, then they felt, the Jewish people, the whole nation felt, Hayacholas shehoyo b'yad Moshe b'li matei halakim. Moshe Rabbeinu's hand had the power of Hashem in him, and he did not need the stick of God. V'chozru v'hodu l'rishonos, and therefore they were able to now admit and say, yes, all the miracles until now showed the greatness of Moshe, and it's not something that anybody else could do as well. Now, Still not. Can people not see the pages that I'm referring to? Okay.
Yes, that's right.
I can see.
No, I can't see it. Miriam does. Can't
It's
see
not
it.
scrolling down. Okay, so 1 second. 1 second.
Oh, now I can't see it. I can see you, but the text disappeared.
Is it scrolling now?
Yeah, now yes. For me, yes, Carmela.
Okay, good. How's that?
Yeah, it's working.
Good, good.
Yeah, no,
So
it's
now-
good. No, it's
Okay.
good.
So the Rosh brings us support for his father's explanation from a medrash on Tehillim. He says, Ani matzati sa'ad l'divrei Abba Mari. I found a support for the words of my father, which was that Moshe Rabbeinu does not use a stick at all in the splitting of the sea, based on an interesting medrash Tehillim on what David HaMelech writes in chapter 114, Perek Kuf Yudalet. We know these words because they form part of Hallel. They're part of the second chapter in Hallel. Hayom ra'av hayanos, hayaden yisov le'achar. The sea saw and fled. The Jordan River turned aside or turned back. The mountains, Hahorim roktu ke'elim gevos kivnetzoin. The mountains danced like rams, like gazelles, and the hills like sheep. Malach hayom kisonos. What is it with you, O sea, that you run? O Jordan, that you turn backwards? And the mountains that dance like Elim, etc. Milifnei Adon chuli aretz, milifnei Elokei Yaakov. It is before the Master who made the world, before the God of Yaakov. Now, the Medrash is going to talk about these words, Malacha Hayom Kisonos. What is it with you that you run? What is that question really saying? Now, normally when we read this, we say, well, what is it with you, the sea? What are you running from? You're running away from the Adon Chuli Aretz. But now the Medrash has a fascinating insight into these words. And the Medrash brings a parable about a king's minister who's longing to gain access to the royal garden. It may be compared to a king who one of his servants became ill. And when he got up from his illness and he was able to walk on his feet, he had this longing to walk and stroll around one of the orchards of the king. He begged the king permission and he says, I'd love to go through your orchard, your royal highness, your royal gardens. Please, can I have the key for this orchard? The king gives him his ring and he says, show it to the Pardes, show it to the guardian, the royal guard at the orchard, v'yanuach v'yishkat shama, and hasar, etc. And you'll have quiet. You'll be able to stroll there, do what you want there, etc. Hasar hahu halach el hashomer. The minister took the ring. He goes to the shomer. He goes to the guard. Vayamoin hashomer. And the guard refuses, and he says to him, Surmalai, get away from me. The king has already warned me never to open this closed garden for any human being. The minister goes back disillusioned to the king and he tells him what has happened. When the king hears that, the king girds his loins and he goes in himself. And as he turns up, the king turns up, the sentry, the guard sees him and is gripped by a fear. And he says, Oy vey, the king himself has now asked me to open up. I'll get killed because I have rebelled against him. And I haven't acted when I saw the ring at first. Also, what does the guard do? He runs for his life. And as the king notices the guardian running, he calls him in a loud voice, Malacha Shomer, why you, my God? Why you, Kitanus? Why do you run away? You are absolutely loyal. You are kept my command. You are guarding it honestly and faithfully. But me'ata now, I'm asking you now, this is my servant. I want his glory. I want you to now do for him anything he asks, big or small. The Madrash brings this mashal concerning the story of the Kriyas Yamsuf. Hashem's the king, Moshe's the minister, Uzzah, the guardian angel of the sea, is that guardian of the palace of the royal garden. Kach, in a similar way, says the Madrash, Moshe Rabbeinu halach el Uzzah Sarah Shel Yam. He goes to Uzzah, who is the angel of the sea, and he has the Mate Holakim b'yodai. He has the staff of God in his hand, which has on it engraved the Shem HaMefurash, the explicit name of God. But the Sar, the angel of the sea, Uzzah, refuses to open up its waters for Moshe. He says, "Les ana mitkavesh min kadam yeluditza." I will not be controlled by a human mortal born of a woman, as it says in the Madrash. So, what does that happens then? L'soif nigla hakodesh baruch hu b'chvod alayom. Hashem appears in his glory at the sea. And then hayom rav ayonas mipanav. And then the sea flees in absolute terror. And Hashem calls out to the sea and says, Malacha hayom kitzanos. Why are you so afraid? Al tira, don't be afraid. You have done a splendid job. You have kept my command that I gave you right back from creation, not to open up your waters. But this is my Meshoris Naaman. This is my faithful servant. B'chol beisi, shamor v'al tamer bo. Please do not rebel against him. He does not need any sign. He does not need any miracle. Shmi b'kirbo, the name, my name of God is in him. Le'en kol, in front of everybody. Yivkia hayam, he splits the sea, and the waters flow b'yada chazaka, with his mighty hand, etc. And this is how the Rosh uses this mashal to show a support for his father, that there was no need for the rod, for the staff of God to be used here. On the contrary, Hashem Dafka wanted here not to use the staff, but rather to see that to show that Hashem's strength, Hashem's name, was in Moshe Rabbeinu, and he splits the sea. Well, one could then ask another question: why does Moshe need to stretch his hand over the sea for the waters to return to normal? Now, we understand that Moshe Rabbeinu stretching his hand over the sea to split the waters. We understand that what happened. We understand, according to the Rosh, why that was done. But why does he need to stretch his hand and to make a special movement for the waters to return to normal? Comes along the Arachaim and explains as follows. Tzorich ladas, we need to understand. Le'eze inyan hutzrach lintos yodai. Why does Moshe Rabbeinu have to do anything to stretch his hand? Wouldn't they automatically come down? As soon as the last Jew would come up, Aliyas Yisrael, wouldn't that be when the last Egyptian was coming into the sea? Of its own accord, the sea should return and flow as normal. And here the Arachaim Kodesh answers in several different ways. Let's have a look at some of the different ways that he answers this question. Number one, perhaps Hashem wants to spare the Egyptians also. In other words, maybe for the very reason that God said to split, he split in the places that the Jewish people had already passed over or passed through. And the Egyptians are coming in exactly that space. And the Yamsuf now, the angel of the Yamsuf thinks, Ma elu af elu. Just look, these are being saved, so these are being saved as well. Maybe the others should be saved. And therefore, maybe they thought that it's meant to stay split for longer and not to return to normal. It therefore needed Hashem to be goizer, to decree, no, I want them all to be in the ocean at the same time. I want the Egyptians and the Jews to be all together in the sea at the same time. And nevertheless, I want you to make sure that the Egyptians get drowned. This was not known by the Yam Suf. It wasn't a question that it was disobeying Hashem. It needed, however, this, if you like, it needed this positive instruction from Hashem to Moshe. Moshe, tell the sea, the shlichus is over. The errand is accomplished. I want you now to flow. Don't wait. Don't wait. Second explanation as to why it needed a positive movement of Moshe Rabbeinu waving his hand. The Gemara brings down a halacha in the Masechta Yom Tov, which we call Masechta Be'ah, that anything that was prohibited by a minyan, by a beis din, by a certain account of judges, of Chazal, need another minyan to make it mutter. And they prove it from the pasuk where Moshe Rabbeinu tells the Jewish people, Shuvu lochem le'olechem, go back to married life, go back to your tents after the giving of the Torah. Before the giving of the Torah, several days they had to stay away from their wives and now go back. Why? Why does he need to tell them to go back? Matan Torah is over, automatically they go back. Hagam shein tam li'isur. Even though there's no reason to say that the Jewish people shouldn't go back now. There's no reason, because Matan Torah is over, it doesn't matter. If you were told to stay away, you don't go back until the beis din tells you, you go back now. It was necessary to hear a positive permission to go back. The Yam Suf needed a positive instruction before it could go back and roll down and put its waters again. A third explanation. Perhaps, says the Racham Kodesh, maybe that the sea might have now returned to normal in a slow, ordinary fashion. After the enormous change that had happened to it, maybe now there would be a gradual turn, a gradual change to normal flow. And if that would be the case, the Egyptians, Yimalet, could have possibly escaped. Hashem says to Moshe, there is no gradual change here. It's got to be fast. It's got to go back. It must be immediately. And indeed, that's what happens. It goes back to its peak strength as it was before the splitting. Fourth explanation, says the Racham Kodesh. Why does Moshe Rabbeinu have to stretch his hand over it? I'm sure it's possible, because the sea was struck by Moshe. So Hashem wanted that just like it was struck by Moshe, it shall be healed through Moshe. Shav v'rafalo. He did tshuva, and now he heals him. Shav v'rafalo. Alidei netias yodai. And Moshe Rabbeinu now had to positively do an action of stretching his hand, and Hashem supports it, as it says in the book of Yeshayahu, Samach Gimel, chapter 63 in the book of Yeshayahu, talking about the splitting of the sea there. Molich liyamin Moshe Zeroya Tifarto Yisborach. Yisborach is not part of the pasuk. Molich liyamin Moshe means Hashem leads on the right-hand side of Moshe, Zeroya Tifarto, his glorious hand. Hashem, so to speak, puts his glorious arm alongside the right hand of Moshe. He's completely supporting Moshe. He wants Moshe, you struck the sea, you heal it now. And finally, the fifth explanation is as follows. Hashem wanted a complete wipeout. No survivors of the terrorists of these in the form of these Egyptians. Hashem therefore wanted Moshe Rabbeinu, stretch your hand, l'rmoz liyam, to hint to the Yam Suf. Do your job completely. I want you now to return. Your waters should flow again, but not a single soldier, not a single horse or a rider to remain. B'shum ofen, leval yival yimalet mitzri, not a mitzri should be able to remain. Lo shuv la'alois ma'ayam, to rise up and go out of the sea. Says the Orachaim HaKodesh, it was quite possible through natural means that they should have had survivors. I mean, there were people on the edges of the Yam Suf. Shebeshita achas, with one swim, they could easily have got out of the sea. It was for this reason that Hashem now was instructing the ocean. Al kulam levilti yimalek mehem ad echad, not one should remain. And indeed, this incurred, as the pasuk says, by Yeshuva Hamayim by Yechusav, and the waters returned and they covered over everybody. But to do that, to accomplish that, Moshe Rabbeinu needed to Nateas Yotcha, to stretch your hand over the sea. So these are the 5 explanations offered by the Racham HaKodesh as to why it needed Natei Yotcha al Hayam. Let's have a look at topic 2 for tonight, which is the condition that was made for with the Yam Suf by HaKodesh Baruch Hu on its creation. Okay. So hopefully people can see. Yeah. Can everyone see the new sheet that we've got?
Yes, I think.
Good.
Yes. Yes.
Vayet Moshe Yada, Moshe stretched his hand al Hayam over the sea, and the sea returned back towards morning La'es Sonai, to its former strength. Or Mitzrayim Nosim Lekrosa, Egypt were running towards it. Vaynair Hashem is Mitzrayim, and Hashem tossed the Egyptians into the sea, as Rashi says, like a person empties out a pot, just completely tossing into the sea. And here it says the word La'es Sonai. What does this word mean? Towards morning, the sea returns La'es Sonai. Says Rashi, La'es Sonai means Latok Boy Harishon. It returns back to its former strength. The word in Hebrew for strong is Eitan. Eitan Moshevecha. That's what Bilam says when he sees the Jewish people and he says, how strong is your settlement, etc. It means its former strength. And that's the simple pshat and the only pshat that Rashi brings. But if we look at the Medrash, we find a different explanation. The Medrash tells us that Moshe first questions the right to split the sea. Ataharim esmatra, you shall lift your staff. Says Moshe before God, you're telling me I should split the sea and turn the sea into dry land? But do you not write in the book of Yirmiyahu, doesn't it say, Asher samti chol gvuliyam, I made the sand as a boundary for the oceans? You swore that you would not tear that boundary apart. Right back from creation, you created the oceans and dry land. Amar Rabbi Lazar Amar Moshe said to God, didn't you say that the sea would not be dry land? You said, Asher samti chol gvulayam. And he quotes another pasuk from Eve as well. Says the Medrash, Hashem responds as follows. The sea must observe its condition upon creation. Amar HaKodesh Baruch Hu, God said, Lo karasa mitchilas haTorah. Moshe, you haven't looked at what's written at the beginning of the Torah. You're quoting things in the book of Yirmiyahu. You're quoting things from the book of Eve. Let me show you what it says at the beginning of my holy Torah, says Hashem. God said, let the waters be gathered in one spot and become the oceans. I made the condition with the sea. I told the oceans right at the beginning that there would come a time that I would split it. I would tear the ocean apart. As it says, Vayoshav hayam lifnos boker le'esonoi. Says the Medrash, and the sea returned towards morning to its Ason. What's Ason mean? Says the Medrash, lisnoi. It returned to fulfill its condition that God had made with it right back at the beginning of creation. And when that happened, when Moshe heard this, he immediately hears that HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells him this, that there was this inbuilt condition in the creation of the sea that it should be split. He goes to split the sea. And as soon as he goes to split it, the sea protests. Now, when we mention the sea, we're talking about the angel, of course, of the sea, the Malach Hayam. The sea protests at being split by Moshe. Says the Medrash, Amar Hayam, the ocean turns to Moshe and says, Miponecha ninikra. What? I should tear myself apart for you? Ani gadol mimcha. I'm older than you. I've been created on Shlishi, on the third day of creation. You have been created on the sixth day of creation, as man was indeed with the animals. So it's time to listen to your elders, is in fact what the sea is telling Moshe. Moshe hears this. He goes and he says to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem, the sea does not want to split. And as we said before, earlier on tonight, quoting from the Rosh, the Medrash, Hashem, so to speak, steps in and forces a division, not in parliament. He forces the sea to split. What does Hashem do? Nosan Yeminoi al Yeminoi shel Moshe. He puts his right hand, capital H, on the hand of Moshe, on the right hand of Moshe. Quoting again from the same pasuk in Yeshayahu Samach Gimel, Molich liyamin Moshe zroya tifartoi. Hashem puts or leads his glorious arm along the right hand of Moshe. Miyad ra lekodesh baruch hu uvarach. And when the ocean, when the Red Sea notices or sees God's arm, so to speak, on the hand of Moshe, now Hashem has no arm, but he sees the glory, then the sea starts to run. Hayom ra vayanis. Mara, what did he see? The sea could no longer stay in its way. It fled. And Moshe says, Malach hayom kitanus. All of a sudden, now you run away, don't you? And Omar lahayom, the sea answers, because mipnei Elokei Yaakov. It's because of the God of Yaakov. I am frightened of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Miyad, immediately then, Kiven Sher Moshe Yad Aliyah, Moshe lifts his hand, stretches it over the sea. Nivka, it splits, as it says, by Yiboku Hamayim, and the sea and the waters split. Says the Medrash, the waters split. Interesting expression. What about the Yam split? Why didn't it say the Yam split? We talk about Kriyas Yamsuf. We don't say Kriyas Hamayim Shel Hasuf. We say the Yamsuf. Answers the Medrash. It does not say Hayvaboka Hayam that the sea split. It says Vayiboku Hamayim, the water split. Malamed, this tells us that all the waters in the world, in every fountain, every well, in every part of the globe, Nifka'u, was split. Shenamar, as it says, Vayiboku Hamayim, it says, and the waters split. Not the Red Sea, not the sea, but the actual waters all over the world. V'chein b'shar shechazru, when the waters came back again, Kol hamayim, chazru kol hamayim, all the waters returned as well. As it says, Vayashuvu Hamayim, and the waters returned. And all these miracles took place through Moshe. Shenamar Vayet Moshe es yadoi al hayom, and Moshe Rabbeinu stretched his hand over the ocean. For this reason, God praises him in the book of Yeshayahu, by Yizkari me'olam Moshe Amoy, and he remembered the days of old, Moshe Amoy, as he drew his people up from the river. Moshe, he does not mean Moshe, it means drawing up, like the word Moshe. And it says, again, this famous pasuk, Moilech liyamin Moshe zroya tifartoi. The glorious arm of Hashem was led alongside the right hand of Moshe. Full stop. Okay, so we see here that there's a bit of protesting going on. First by Moshe, later on by the angel of the sea. Hashem comes in, forces a split, and not only does the sea split, but everywhere around the globe splits. And that's why this miracle of Kriyas Yamsuf was one of those miracles that was worldwide, that the world itself at large saw. This was not just in one country. Everywhere over the world realized that there was this miracle. But what's fascinating about all this story is that when we look at the part of the story where it says that the sea returned back to fulfill its condition, it seems to say it at the end of the story when the waters are starting to come back again. What a strange place. And this is, in fact, a famous question asked by many Mefarshim. Let's have a look tonight at some of the ways in which this is dealt with. The sea seems to fulfill its condition earlier on when it split the first time. Asks the Rechaim HaKodesh, le'esonoi. Chazal say, le'tnoi harishon. It went back to its former, to fulfill its original condition. Kosheli midivrayim. I find this strange. Ein zeh makom atnai. This is not the place where the condition is taking place. This is the place where it's now doing its natural thing, which is to flow like it normally does. It should have said it at the time of the chalukah, at the time of the splitting of the ocean. That's where you would expect it to say, and the ocean came to fulfill its condition and split. But it doesn't say that. Let's have a look at some of the ways in which this was dealt with throughout the ages. The Rechaim HaKodesh says, Ulai perhaps, Yodia Kost of the Posuk's telling now, that after it was able to return back to its normal natural form of flowing, the waters running, then the ocean realized that the condition that God made with it had been fulfilled, but nothing more. What do you mean nothing more? The ocean was getting a little bit scared. It thought it's finished for good. It thought it was gezeras kilyoinoi ohigas sivona lihibatel me'olam. It started to think, maybe I'm not going to be there any longer. I'm gone. Maybe this is it. This is it forever. Maybe the waters are never going to flow along my banks. Why did the ocean think that way? Why did the angel of the sea think that way? Hagam ki hatnai hayadulai. Even though it knew there was a condition, because Hashem made a condition right back from creation. Ulai perhaps shelirois hafloas hadavar. When the angel of the sea saw the incredible thing that happened here, this was not just the sea splitting. This was much more than that. This is where the land of the seabed itself dries to such a position that the waters become so dry. The waters then rise up like rocks, like walls of stone. That made the ocean now think, Kiva ad kitzo, it's it's gone. And it'll never come back again. And it was only when the waters were able to flow again, kishchachozar, when it started to flow again, did it then realize, now it's only the condition that I fulfilled. That's all it was. My splitting was only condition. So therefore, answers the Rechaim HaKodesh, it was only when it was able to flow again that it then was convinced, it was reassured of its survival, and then realized it is condition, and that was all it was. It was just a condition of being created. I will survive. I will flow for another day. Now, asks the Rechaim HaKodesh further. We know that the sea protested. But why? Why exactly? Let's have a look. Tzorich Lodas Ofen Atzanai. What was the condition that God made? Was it for the Yotze Mitzrayim? Did Hashem say to the sea when it was created, right back in creation? Do you know that in about 2,500 years, my people are going to come out of Egypt? I want you to split for them. Was that the condition? If that was the condition, says Rechaim HaKodesh, Lomon nirash pamazos. Why is the sea getting also, as we say in Yiddish, aufgeregt? What's it getting so excited about? As Chazal say, it did get excited. It didn't want to. It protested against Moshe. It says, I'm not splitting before you. I've created on day 3. You're created on day 6. I'm older than you, etc. Until Hashem had to put his right hand along Moshe's, etc., etc. Asks the Rechaim HaKodesh, what is it? Why are you protesting if you made a condition and that's the condition of your creation? Question 1. Question 2, says the Rechaim HaKodesh, Royani, I can see, we find that for great people throughout the ages, the oceans split. This is not the first time and not the last time that the waters split. The Gemara in Chulin brings the story of Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, who was going to redeem captives. And he goes along, and the river comes along, the river Ginai, and he says, Ginai, you better split. And they didn't want to split, etc. Again, there, the river protests. The if Hashem only made a condition for those who came out of Egypt alone, that was the only condition. What right has Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair got to do to overpower the work of creation? What's happening here? Explains the Rechaim HaKodesh as follows. The condition that God made was not for the people who came out of Egypt alone. This Tanai that God made was for all of creation, not just for the ocean, not just for the Yam Suf. It was for every fiber of creation to be kfufim la Torah va'amaleha, to be subservient, to totally nullify itself to Torah and those who work it. To do everything asher yigzor aleim, anything that the tzaddikim will make exera on them. Umem shaltam, and their control over them, like the mamshela saboira baruch hu. Hashem said, I will give my tzaddikim the power to rule over creation like me, like I do myself. And for that reason, throughout history, says the Chaim, we find heaven, in earth, stars, in the sun, in the moon, in various stories, in Tanakh, with Yehoshua, with all over, with Gideon, that tzaddikim had prevailed over them. Yachidim. It goes without saying, where there were many Jews, that they had an ability to control the rules of nature, to ride over, to rule over creation. As Hashem had done right from the start of creation. And Chazal indeed say this on the Pasuk Yeshayahu chapter 43, Boiracha Yaakov. What's Boiracha Yaakov mean? Hashem is saying to the rest of the world, your creator is Yaakov. What does it mean, your creator is Yaakov? Hashem is telling his world, my dear universe, you know who created you? The Yidden. Hakol b'koach HaTorah. It's everything in the strength of Torah. Tzayilmad. Look from the first word of my holy Torah. Breishis bara l'kimis hashmayim v'sa'aretz. For two things God created the world, for Torah and for the Yidden. They create you. They give you the reason for creation. They give you the reason to be there. And if they decide that they need to control you, I will give them that power. So here we have an insight, says Aracham HaKodesh, into that condition. It's number one, not just for the Yam Suf, it's for all of creation, heavens, earth, stars, etc. And number two, it's not just for one period in history, in the year 2448. It's for the entire time of this universe. But nevertheless, we do find that the sea protests. So there's something else here. There's one more little nekuda, one more little point here, which the Aracham HaKodesh points out, and that is as follows. V'hinei b'yetzias Yisrael miMitzrayim, as the Jewish people exit Egypt, adayin lo kiblu haTorah. They didn't receive the Torah yet. And if that's the case, the Gezeira on the Nivroim, on creation, is not yet a Gezeira. It's not yet a decree. After all, it's through the power of the Torah that the Jewish people have that strength, that God gives them that strength. And for this reason, says the Arachaim, the ocean, the sea, does not readily want to split. And he still goes and he says to Moshe, I'm older than you, you're created on Friday, I'm created on Tuesday, etc., etc. He's hinting to Moshe, you are not a Ben Torah, because if you are a Ben Torah, then indeed I would give preference to you, because everybody agrees that Torah preceded the world. In fact, God made the Torah his blueprint to create the world. But you're not. And this is taking place before Matan Torah, the story of Kriyas Yamsuf. So what does Hashem do to silence this critic, this protest? So Hashem acts wisely, he puts his right hand on the right hand of Moshe. What's this idea of the right hand of Hashem, the right hand of Moshe? Explains the Rechaim, Pirush, that means, Herahu, Hashem is telling the Yam Suf, you're wrong. He is a Ben Torah. Even before Matan Torah, Hamityaches lo Yamin, which is related to the right. Where do we see the connection of Torah and the right? Right down at the end of the Torah in Parshas Hazino, towards the end, Miminoi Eish Dos Lomoi. From the right hand of God issues forth a fire of law for the Jewish people. In other words, the right hand of Hashem is referring to Torah. And when Hashem puts his hand, so to speak, his right arm on Moshe Rabbeinu's right arm, it's as if to say to the Yam Suf, that's the Torah. This is the man of Torah, even before the Torah is given. When the sea notices this, take gifu miyad nikra ketarishan. Now it submits. And for this reason, called tzaddik v'tzaddik sheyamed acha kabbalas Torah. Ever since the Torah has been given, the tzaddik in every generation can come along and have that shtar choiv and hold and wave that document and will force nature, will force the work of creation to submit lefanov to before him. Whether it's Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair splitting the river Ganai, whether it's the Yeshua and the sun stands still, or whether it's the moon standing still, this can all happen. The Timtzan, you will find indeed that when the sea does not want to split for Pinchas ben Yair and for those who accompany him, he's able to threaten it, and indeed the river Ganai gets scared and does split. About 100 years before the Orach Chaim HaKodesh, we find another commentary also known, given the title of HaKodesh, and that was the Al-Shich HaKodesh. The Al-Shich HaKodesh, like the Orach Chaim and like so many others, were also bothered by this question of the position of Eisonoi, the condition being fulfilled at the return of the sea rather than at the splitting. So he asks that same question, but he asks two more questions. What does it mean by Yoshev? And he came back to his condition. Normally, you come back to something that you've done before, that you've been there before. By Yoshev, you return there. If we say La'esono means its former strength, the simple pshat like Rashi learns, so then it's easy to understand by Yoshev, and he comes back to its former strength. That makes sense. But according to the Chazal, that the Tanoi means, Esono means it comes back to its former condition. Well, wait a second. Where has it done its condition already? There's only one condition, isn't there? And third of all, why need a condition in the first place? Why do we need that condition? So, first of all, to answer that question about why need a condition, the Al-Shich HaKodesh says, B'chol dover, in anything in this world, it's difficult for the minister or the angel in charge of it to change its nature that God had implanted in it. Hashem does not want to change nature unless absolutely necessary. Hashem wants this world to go on, and so to speak, the angels that are involved in that over those things of creations also find it difficult to break the teva, break the nature. It's almost akin to a human being. We find it difficult to break a habit, to break a nature, that therefore also the Yam Suf finds it difficult. It needed to have a condition in the first place, therefore, to do it. Okay, but what's this condition being fulfilled a second time? What does that mean exactly? Is the condition being fulfilled for the first time or the second time? Now, explains the Al-Shich HaKodesh as follows. When the sea split for the Jewish people to come and enter, it did fulfill its condition. And it sure split outside, well outside its nature. It went, if you like, so to speak, outside its boundaries. Now, Chazal, however, say, and Rabbi Broh agrees to this in the Medrash, that when the waters returned back over the Egyptians, contrary to what some think, the Jewish people were still in the Yam Suf. Now, some of us imagine that the Jewish people had already gone out of the sea, and there is opinion of that. And then the Egyptians come in, and then the waters start tumbling down. Says the Al-Shich HaKodesh, no. The Jewish people are still in the Yam Suf when the waters are now coming over the Egyptians, and you can see that from the pshat of the psukim. And therefore, the Sarayam, the angel of the sea, wants to now protest and say, look, I've done my job. I fulfilled my condition once. But now, when the sea now returns over the Egyptians, the sea now thinks, why should I bother myself now to create another miracle? That the Jews and the Egyptians shall both be in the sea at the same time, and that my waters should cover the Egyptians exactly, and not touch the Jews who are in the same body of water, in the same Yam Suf, or area, I should say, of the body of water. Especially, what is this, that my waters should stand up like a wall in front of the Jewish people on both sides, Pogim b'machane Yisrael, and that I have to guard them as my waters come down in their strength, le'esonoi, to fulfill a condition. I've done my condition. What's this? What further do I have to do? Says the Al Shikha Kodesh. The Sar, the angel of the sea, so to speak, finds it difficult, and it says, you know what? Let the Jews go out completely. And after they go out, before the Egyptians come, leave this ocean, then I will return my waters over them. But wherever they are. And Hashem therefore says, no, that's not going to happen. I want there to be another miracle because that's the second part of the condition. Therefore it says, and the sea returned towards morning, le'esonoi, to now fulfill the condition entirely in the morning, to complete what it started at the time of the splitting. Now it's also fulfilling the condition a second time. That now also, when those waters are all coming down, hayabasha, was all dry land wherever the Jewish people would be, because the waters were coming now before the Jews are leaving the Yam Suf. And so what we have is this extraordinary miracle. As the Egyptians are drowning, the Bnei Israel are walking on the dry seabed. And this is hinted to by the Pasuk, Uvnei Yisrael holchu vayabasha b'soich hayam. Listen to those words. And the Bnei Yisrael are going on dry land in the sea. Meaning, what does that mean? That means that whilst the Egyptians are drowning, in the same moment, the Jewish people are walking happily in dry land in the sea. And the Jews do not go out of the ocean until the waters have now completely swamped over the Karkois Hayam, over the body, the seabed, as it says, V'hamayim lahem chomam miminam esvalam, meaning that whilst the waters were being melting from the solid state in which they were as walls out in the Egyptian, while they're now melting over the Egyptians, the same waters are now acting as a wall in front of the Jews. Incredible. And from the sides of the Jewish people, they're coming now on the Egyptians who are behind them. So the walls are standing firm in front of the Jews, and now they melt as they now start to fall over the Egyptians. These miraculous walls were so incredible. It's possible. Some of the Jews could have been drowned. For this reason, the Pasuk says, Hamayim lahem chomam miminam umismalam. On both sides, the walls are standing miraculously, nikafim, congealed, hard like a wall, at the time when the rest of the waters are melting and now are dissolving and falling upon the Egyptians. It's something just unbelievable. The fact that they're going in the sea far, as each Jew would travel, that space would then be filled with water behind them, and then the walls would be melting and filling them and drowning the Egyptians at the same time. It was just around the Jews that the walls appeared. This already is getting too much for the angel of the sea. This is already, this is, so to speak, tircha yasera, an extra bother. El Hasar. The sea would have much preferred that the Jews get out of that ocean, get out of the Yam Suf, and then I'll do my job. But to have such miracles upon miracles, no, I don't want to do that. And the sea, the angel of the sea, is joined now by a nasty angel, the angel of Egypt, which is called Mitzrayim. The country of Egypt has an angel that's like every country has a protective angel, and the protecting angel of Egypt is called Mitzrayim, like the name of the country. And he starts to clamor, and he says, no, he says, this is not right. And Hashem has to completely subdue the arrogance, so to speak, of the Sar. So we'll go to the next paragraph here. What Hashem does is Hashem kills, so to speak, the Sar, the angel of Egypt, which is called Mitzrayim. When Hashem attacks a nation, he attacks the angel of that nation first, brings them down, then brings the nation down. So that's why if you look, the Al-Sheikh HaKodesh points out, it says God emptied out Egypt. Notice, Mitzrayim. That refers to the angel of Egypt. Hashem empties out, he controls, he tosses out the angel of Egypt completely, etc. Mitzrayim. But then it says, Vayinar es Mitzrayim, and then he actually empties the Egyptians themselves. Ki Mitzrayim Shemoy, because the angel of Egypt is called Egypt. Vayinar Hashem es Mitzrayim, he empties out, he tosses, so to speak, the angel that's called Mitzrayim. But then that's not good enough. The second time it says, Vayinarem Hashem b'sochayom, it says Hashem now throws them, the Egyptians themselves, into the sea. And why does the angel of Egypt need to be silenced? Needs to be silenced because it had a kitrug. It had a complaint about the Jewish people. And it says, God, you're being favored, you're showing favoritism to your people. They were worshipping idols just like the Egyptians. Why do you favor them? God silences this critic, and the Mekatreg is gone. And once the critic is gone, the waters now return to cover over the Egyptians, their chariots, and the Jewish people are going, Holchu bayabasha b'sechayom. Says the Al-Sheikh HaKodesh, this was essential, this was critical. Without this, the Jews would have drowned in the sea as well. Hayunit bayim bayam. And just to prove that, if you look at the words, Hamayim lahem choma, the waters formed a wall on them. The word choma is written without a vav, which means it can be read as chema, anger. And indeed, Chazal tell us that there was a fury of anger that was poured out over the Jewish people. Why are they being saved? Why are the Jews being saved? They're just as bad, etc., etc. And so Chazal say that they needed a special kus, miminoi eish taslamai, for the right and from the left. Chazal say that Tefillin and the Torah, etc. But basically, we know that these walls could have been walls of anger, which could have been very dangerous to the Jewish people, but Hashem turned them instead into walls of protection. We'll finish off tonight with just a deeper look. The word Tanai, this comes from the works of Rabbi Zevin in Torah L'Moedim. The word Tanai is the same letters as Ason. Ason means strong, firm. Tanai means condition. We've learned two explanations tonight as to what it means that sea returned L'Asonai. Either Rashi, the simple pshat, strength, or Chazal say, don't read it as L'Asonai, but L'Tanai, condition. The word Asonai meaning condition. Explains Reb Zevin, how interesting that the word Tanai and Ason have the same letters, but opposite in meaning. Tanai is condition, if. Ason is strong, firm, unconditional. Say the Chazal, al tikre le'asonai, don't read it as to its strength, but rather litznoi, to its condition. What does that mean? The simple pshat of that medrash is, sounds strange, simple of medrash, but the normal pshat that we teach the medrash is, don't say that the sea returned to its strength, but rather it returned to fulfill its condition. Says Reb Zevin, perhaps we can have another twist on this. Meaning to say, al tikra le'asonai, you cannot reach the strength, ela lisnai, unless you fulfilled your condition. And therefore, explains Reb Zevin, as a third answer for tonight, as to why it mentions the condition, the sea returning to its condition when it starts to flow and starts to regain its normal movement. Why there does it say it fulfilled its condition? Says Reb Zevin, that's when the sea becomes strong. The sea becomes strong because now it's fulfilled its condition. And therefore you see this word Tanai at the end. When is it strong? When it's fulfilled its condition. Says Reb Zevin, this is the dichotomy, this is the difference between Olam Hazeh and the Osid Lavai. In this world, everything is if. V'haya im shamaya tishmu, if you will listen, everything is if, right? We live in the world of ifs. Everything is on condition. Osid Lavai, everything is complete and solid. There's no conditions. Ason, it's firm. What you see is what you get. That's it. What you earn and what you work hard in this world for, you get in that world. You can't change it. It's like Ason, strong. And how interesting that the hint to that is that the word Ason, made up of four letters, Aleph, Yud, Tov, Nun, are the letters of the future. Why are they letters of the future? Because in Hebrew, you need any one of those 4 letters to turn a verb into future. Say, I will do, begins with an aleph. To say that he will do, you use the letter yud. To say she will do, or you will do for a man, we say ta'aseh with a taf. And to say we will do, we say na'aseh with a nun. Notice how the prefix of all these forms of the word verbs is always aleph, talef, yud, taf, nun, is one of these 4 letters. Why are these 4 letters used to express the future in all these verbs? It's because in the future, it's not tanai, it's ason. It's actually firm. The ason ha'amiti, the true strength, becomes revealed l'asad lavai, only after the conditions of this world has been fulfilled. When does the sea achieve its ason? When does it achieve its strength? When it's fulfilled its tanai, when it's fulfilled its condition. And that's why only after the splitting do we find the word la'asonai appear. Thanks for listening, and wish everybody a good night and sei gesund.
Thank you, Lior. It's Miriam Malthouse. Could I just ask one quick question? You said there were no survivors, and yet we're told that Paro survived because Hashem wanted to show him the naith, and he turns up later as the king of Nineveh.
That is a very good question, and the answer to that is, as we often answer, there are different midrashim. The medrash that we've quoted does not agree that Paro was left there and Nineveh. Right. The other medrash agrees exactly what you said, and you're absolutely correct. There's another medrash that says he did survive. Correct. Right. It's a medrashim chalukim.
Right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
No,
do you have a minute, or you're rushing to Mariv?
If it's very, very quick.
Yeah, okay, I'll try and make it quick, because I heard years ago a beautiful explanation that Hashem, at the time of Maseh Bereshis, showed the Sar of the Yam Suf, the neshamas of Bnei Israel, and he said in 2448 years you're going to have to split for them. And the Sar said, beautiful neshamas, no problem. When Bnei Israel came to the borders of Yam Suf, and Hashem said, as now is the time for you to split, he saw people that had been enslaved and worship idols and, you know, not the same pure neshamas that they were at Maseh Bereshis. But Hashem explained to him, deep down they are the same neshamas, the pure neshamas, and that's when he agreed to split. But too long for now. But Yossi Jackson learns a beautiful explanation about Shalom Bayis for that, you know, when we first marry, we say the beautiful pure neshama when we see them upstairs, you know, before we come down. And later on during the years of marriage, there, you know, dust and dirt accumulate. And we always have to remember that deep down, they're the same pure neshamas that we saw up in heaven and agreed to marry. That's Bekitzer.
Very, very, very nice. Very, very nice.
Yishakar, thank you so much.
No, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much,
No
Rabbi Broh.
No thank you.
Yeah, follow up later.
תודה רבה.